The podcasting technology of NORML is made possible by Red Aphid Interactive Media. More information at redaphid.com. And distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. This is your daily audio stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular audio podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about the show at our website, NORMLAudiostash.com. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. Welcome back to the Audio Stash today. It's Monday, May 7th. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Take a moment right now to join us at NORML to end marijuana prohibition in America. Just visit NORML.org. Oh, we got a number of emails in about Friday's show. It was a rerun, a great show actually, with Lee Allen and Doug Benson from the Pot's Greatest Hits CD. We'd originally recorded that interview in December. I was just absolutely out sick. Hey folks, happens to media personalities too, but we're back today with a brand new show. We've got John Sinclair, the poet, author, and activist on the program today, talking about the re-release of his book, Guitar Army. We also have Steve Bloom. We didn't get a chance to play Steve's Celeb Stoner update, and Steve had a very interesting trip down to New Orleans Jazz Fest that we want to talk about. So that'll be first up in the program today will be Steve Bloom, and then John Sinclair with some tracks from MC5, all here on the Audio Stash today. Tomorrow's program, we'll have Government at Work. We'll travel down to Texas and speak with the leader of Houston NORML, Steve Nolan, about the legislation moving through the Texas House down there. Also an update of legislation around the country. Every Tuesday, you can tune in to Government at Work right here on the Audio Stash to find out what's happening on a state level with marijuana law reform. Wednesday's show this week, we'll have a brand new interview with Dr. Mitch Earlywine, and we're going to have some great early summer music for you all week long right here on your source for marijuana information, news, and entertainment, NORML's Daily Audio Stash. Let's open up our stash and get things started on this Monday with some news from NORML. Our news today. Rhode Island General Assembly makes medical marijuana permanent. The Rhode Island House and Senate both approved legislation last week to make permanent the Ocean State's one-year-old medical marijuana program. Rhode Island's law, known as the Edward O. Hawkins and Thomas C. Slater Medical Marijuana Act, currently protects approximately 270 state-authorized patients and their caregivers from state arrest and prosecution. The Senate on Thursday voted 28-5 in favor of the measure, far exceeding the 60% of votes needed to overturn the expected veto by Governor Donald L. Carcieri. The Rhode Island House previously passed an identical bill with similar margins. More information from Rhode Island will be presented later this week on the Audio Stash, and for links to get involved with state legislative reform efforts, please visit the Take Action section at NORML.org.
I want to be famous. I want to wear minks and satins and pearls.
Steve Bloom is the creator of the website CelebStoner.com. He joins us each week here on the Audio Stash, usually on Fridays. Steve, welcome back to the show today.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Doing a lot better here today, Steve. Let me tell you. The last time we spoke to you, you were down in between the 420 events in Houston, Texas, headed over to New Orleans Jazz Fest. Tell us how that festival was going there in the Big Easy.
It's the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. Festival, the 38th year. It is America's greatest music festival by far in my mind. I've been to a lot of festivals, and this one stands out. It's also kind of the granddaddy of a lot of American festivals in that it's a multi-stage event. So there are 11 stages all over this racetrack fairgrounds where it takes place, so you can just wander around from place to place and tent to tent and check out all the music. So, events like Bonnaroo and the Austin City Limits Festival, which are multi-stage events, they all have taken their ideas from Jazz Fest. What really makes Jazz Fest so unique is that the music is distinctly New Orleans and Louisiana based. They don't really take music from around the country so much as just local, and they do have headliners that draw in crowds. So there were performers like Van Morrison on the bill last year, Bruce Springsteen, Dave Matthews, Paul Simon. So they do have a lot of international and national headliners. But for the most part, the reason you go to Jazz Fest is to take in the music of the region, and also to eat the food of the region, because the food is so great there. You can't get a hot dog or a hamburger. It's all crawfish sandwiches and dishes and po' boys and all that kind of stuff. So it's really just it's really a terrific event. And so the first weekend was last weekend. The second weekend is this weekend. So what happens is it's a 3-day event, and then it takes a break and then picks up again for the next weekend, so 6 days total. And also, there's 8 hours of music from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., and then people take a little bit of a break, and then they resume going to see music during the night. And New Orleans runs 24/7, generally all year round, but especially during Jazz Fest, so you can go see music all night long. You could literally at 6 in the morning see music. So bands start at 2 a.m. and they go for hours and hours and hours. So it's a lot of fun. Jazz Festival is just a terrific experience. I really recommend it for anybody who's never been to New Orleans, and especially, to that particular event.
Now, the Louisiana Lieutenant Governor made an appearance at the festival while you were there. What did he have to say?
Mitch was there to do a little press conference and speak with the media and, to promote culture and music in New Orleans. And it was an interesting press conference. It was a very small get-together, and he, chatted a lot about, the state of New Orleans and the state of, music and culture in the region and how they're trying to promote their music and trying to rebuild. But he did make an interesting comment, asked about the conditions and specifically the most devastated area post-Katrina, which is the lower Ninth Ward, which was obliterated, completely wiped out. It's a ghost town. He said that New Orleans needs a Marshall Plan, that what's going on now is dysfunctional, and this is about 20 months after Katrina. And, as someone who comes from New York down to New Orleans, once a year right now, I've been down there twice now since Katrina, and I was curious to see the state of New Orleans. When I was there last year, it was kind of mind-blowing to see, what had happened to this beautiful city. Everybody knows, that the city was ravaged by the storm, but you have to sort of see it firsthand to really understand how bad it is. And last year there was debris everywhere, and when you were driving around, you have to be careful not to run into something that's just in the middle of the street, and it was just, buildings just wrecked everywhere. And this year, it's a lot cleaner. They've cleaned up a lot of the debris. They've gotten rid of a lot of the cars that were abandoned and junked and stuff like that. But as you go around town, stores and houses are all shuttered. When you drive around at night, you don't see a lot of lights on. As you drive past houses, if there's a car in the driveway, that means somebody's living there and there's a light on. But otherwise, nobody's there. It's very quiet. You drive around, there aren't a lot of vehicles. And this isn't a busy time of the year, with Jazz Fest, with, thousands of people in town for the event, as well as locally, people coming out to support it. And it's still very jarring, to see, what's happened to this city and how little progress seems to have been made, since Katrina happened, that there really hasn't been a Marshall Plan. There really hasn't been a big effort, to rebuild New Orleans in any significant way. So, there needs to be, a big national effort to rebuild this city, and it doesn't seem to be happening.
Now, Steve, you've been going to Jazz Fest for a number of years. You covered it originally for Rolling Stone magazine in the mid-'80s. But, has New Orleans really become nothing more than a big sort of concert venue rather than a living, breathing city?
Well, from an out-of-towner's point of view, it feels like that. I'm not living there on a day-to-day. But it seems like, these two sort of national events that take place there, they draw people, Jazz Fest and Mardi Gras. Those are the two times a year where the media seems to focus in on, the improvements of New Orleans or what's happening now. But then what happens the rest of the year? What's the focus on New Orleans? And it seems, very limited in terms of, any real big effort. So, and here's the, Lieutenant Governor saying it's dysfunctional, that the federal, state, and city can't really figure it out. And, obviously the federal government dropped the ball from the minute Katrina happened, and you can't even dare say the word FEMA, because people, it's like it's a dirty word down there, and it remains that because nothing really has improved. You see trailers around. As a matter of fact, I went down. Funny story. Went with a friend of mine to the Lower Ninth Ward, and he was copping some weed, and we went to a FEMA trailer, and that's where we went to to buy. And in this little cul-de-sac, there was one house that was being renovated, and there was a trailer across the street, and then there was nothing else there. And it's like, what are these people doing? They're ruggedly pioneering to try and save their community, but there's nobody else around. So it seems like it's it's one person here and one person there rebuilding, and it's all about who got an insurance settlement and who didn't, and who could afford to come back and rebuild and who can't. And it seems like drips and drabs. There's no massive change over where you'd see something dramatically improved.
And Steve, overall, is Jazz Fest a stony event?
Yeah, exactly. It is. I mean, New Orleans police have a pretty bad reputation, but they're, they have their hands full right now, and I don't think they're really very concerned about people smoking pot. And there are police on the grounds of the Jazz Fest, but there's, 100,000 people at this event, or it's a huge number of people, so there's no way they can keep up on what people are doing. Plus, they're not really bothering anybody. It's very, it's very friendly, and I've always thought New Orleans is a very smoky town. Interestingly, down south, I smoked a lot of lower end or lower grade weed because it's very available and accessible and cheaper, and maybe fits people's incomes a little bit better down there. The so-called swag coming up from Mexico was pretty available, although when we went to the FEMA trailer, it was a little closer to a little bit of a mid-grade. So yeah, everybody smokes. I mean, music and marijuana and food, music, marijuana, and munchies, they all kind of go together, and New Orleans is just the perfect place for that. But, yeah, you smell it, pretty much, during the festival, you're just in a crowd, and just like any other rock concert in a sense, where people are smoking. I mean, there's no more or less, maybe a little bit more. There's certainly no effort to stop people at the Jazz Festival. I mean, it's a very friendly event when it comes to that, and so it's in the air. It fits in with all the other great smells, at the Jazz Fest.
Well, I can almost smell the sensimilla mixing with the shrimp etouffee. Also, Steve, up at celebstoner.com, I see you highlighted this very interesting story there in New York City about the ganja-smoking granny who recently got let off really for claiming marijuana use on a medical basis up there. Tell us what's going on with that.
Yeah, there's a woman named Barbara Jackson who's 71 years old. She lives in the Bronx, New York, and she was arrested for buying 2 dime bags of marijuana back in March. The story broke in the Daily News this week that she spent 5 hours in jail when the police charged her with making a street purchase, and she explained that, I smoke it to live, and I don't think I should have been arrested. And so she is a medical patient, essentially. And here's someone who has learned, by trial and error that she had cancer and treatments, and she was nauseous and she couldn't eat. And, like a lot of people know about marijuana, that it helps you eat and it kind of, calms your stomach. And, especially for people with cancer and AIDS. And so here was someone who, may or may not have smoked when she was younger, who knows, but she determined that it was helpful to her. And, the police, in New York, as they tend to do, don't really care. Police maybe perhaps all over the country, maybe except for California, they don't really care about medical use. And in New York, there's no awareness of medical use, especially among the police department. I mean, it's not something that they're probably apprised of, and they might know about it by, watching Montel Williams or stuff like that, and maybe reading an occasional article. But, this is just typical of, of the insensitivity of New York, law enforcement. We've seen this over and over again. I mean, the number of arrests that they've made at the marijuana rallies over the years, and but in this case, I think this this typifies that there is a need out there and it's not being addressed. And in New York, there's been an effort to medicalize marijuana within the legislature, and I understand it passed another kind of hurdle this week, but it keeps getting bogged down in the legislature. In New York, you can't do an initiative like they do in California. You need to get it passed through the different houses and then, of course, signed, as a bill, by the governor, and it always stops somewhere along the way. So it's been a struggle. So here's this one woman who illuminated the problem this week, and if anything, when something happens to a woman like this who's the ganja-smoking granny, it's going to make people more aware of it and sensitize them to it a little bit more that, this woman shouldn't be targeted and they should leave her alone. As it turned out, the charges were dismissed.
Well, Steve, this has been another wonderful conversation today. I cannot thank you enough for taking time to share the highlights up at celebstoner.com with us each week, as well as share your travels with us here on the Audio Stash.
All right, thanks a lot, Chris.
Many thanks again, man. Steve Bloom is the editor and creator of celebstoner.com. We have links to it on our website at normalaudiostash.com. Steve joins us usually here on the program every Friday.
You're listening to Normal's Daily Audio Stash.
Today on the Audio Stash, we've got a great artist showcase for you. We have a chance to speak with a legend of the 60s rock scene and one of the most visible social revolutionaries of the time, John Sinclair. John was the man behind the group the MC5 and also a member of the White Panther Party. In 1968, he was entrapped by Michigan law enforcement and handed a lengthy prison sentence for selling 2 marijuana joints. In 1970, John Lennon held a benefit concert with the likes of Stevie Wonder to help free Sinclair and catapulted his name and cause into international notoriety. Sinclair is a poet and author in his book Guitar Army, chronicling the events of the time through his writing and the voices of those around him, as well as some stunning black and white photographs from his first wife, Lenny, was first put into print over 30 years ago. Process Publishers have now re-released Guitar Army, along with a companion audio CD that features John's spoken word, poetry from Allen Ginsberg, actual minutes of White Panther Party meetings, and music from MC5. This week, John will be in New York City at a number of venues around the city, and we have links to all the places he'll be appearing and giving talks at normalaudiostash.com. We caught up with John last week from his new home in Amsterdam. John Sinclair, welcome here to Normal's Daily Audio Stash today.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Hey, John, it's great to see this book, Guitar Army, out in this sort of new format with the CD attached.
The hardest task of the author today, or recording artist, is to keep your work in print. So whenever there's a possibility to get something back in print, I'm a happy guy.
Right on, right on. Now, John, tell us about the rock revolution. What made it come alive?
Well, it was oppositional. It had a lot of energy because it was new and it was different and they didn't like it and they didn't like the people who made it. I'm saying the established order. It was an outlaw thing, rock and roll, in the early 60s, mid-60s, late 60s, until, Woodstock, I guess. And then they saw it was a mass market. And it wasn't just an underground thing, and that our numbers had swelled, so they just bought it out. Like everything else. Now all the music they give us is all made by millionaires, Now you got 50 Cent.
John, you were arrested for 2 joints and handed this harsh prison sentence. Do you feel like anything has changed since then?
It's a long downward curve. It started with the Eagles. No. But I mean, really, since Ronald Reagan in 1980, that's 27 years now. And we're just, they're shrinking the minds of Americans, and they've shriveled up their hearts, and it's just, the music and the popular culture is just dribble. And really, you got to go underground to get anything anymore, just like then. We're back in the same damn stew, you know.
And also, sending you to jail, that certainly did not silence you.
No, it backfired, but it was only because I was so determined. I was determined not to take it, sitting down, so to speak. And I was able to persuade a lot of people to take up my cause, and after it snowballed, finally people who could really help us started to hear about it, like John Lennon and Stevie Wonder and people like that. So they helped me out, and that's how I got out of prison. And my legal appeal, you know, I had a brilliant legal appeal by a great staff of attorneys from Detroit and Michigan. You can't do anything without that lever.
Those lawyers really come in handy. They pay off in the end, don't they?
They're really good for when you got to go to court.
And John, you know, your old stomping ground there in Michigan, that's become an area where we've seen a ton of marijuana law reform, especially when it comes to medical marijuana.
Yeah, but at the same time, you got Rainbow Farm, you know, in 2001, where they just murdered these guys. The feds, they murdered these guys for growing some weed and giving weed away and stuff. So, I mean, you know, there's good things and there's bad things. But it's been like, Jesus Christ, it's been a long time. It's good for medical marijuana and everything, but what about those of us who just want to get high? What's wrong with us? Why are we still reprobates? Everybody else gets high. All of America's on prescription narcotics and alcohol.
Indeed.
You know, why can't we smoke a joint and get high? What the hell? What's wrong with that?
You're based over there in Europe now. Is Europe really that much different than the United States?
Yeah, it hasn't deteriorated. The intelligence of the people hasn't deteriorated. It's dynamic over here because they're creating something new. They're making essentially a United States of Europe. These people were slaughtering each other 60 years ago. You know, I mean, they were exterminating millions of people, and now they're overcoming that, and they're forming a union, and it's pretty interesting.
Also, too, hippie culture is still thriving around the world, and we were speaking with Steve Bloom a couple of weeks ago. You know, popular media, popular music, they're sort of downing on hippie culture lately.
Well, they aren't buying anything. They aren't buying products, you know, they aren't wearing brand names, so there's something wrong with them. They aren't to be encouraged. It's just like people who smoke weed, you know, we're like painted out of regular life in America. I mean, they pay television movie producers millions of dollars not to say anything about weed. Mm-hmm. That's pretty heavy. Well, the media are all owned by the major corporations, you see. One of the major networks is owned by Walt Disney. What kind of cartoon world is that? You know, this Clear Channel owns all of these radio stations. When we were coming up, that was illegal until Ronald Reagan. That was illegal to own 1,500 radio stations. You could own 7.
We're with poet, author, and legendary activist John Sinclair speaking about the reissue of his book, Guitar Army, Rock and Revolution with MC5 and the White Panther Party. The book comes with a companion CD, and let's listen to a track from that now. Here's the MC5 with Motor City Burning.
Can you hear me okay? You know the Motor City's burning, baby. There ain't a thing in the whole wide world they can do. I said the Motor City's burning, baby. There ain't a thing God's white sky they can do. The whole town burning down to the ground. A world
That was the MC5, Motor City Burning, from the companion CD to the book Guitar Army. We're with the author John Sinclair here on the Audio Stash today. John, you've really embraced the internet. You know, do you think that this is an important force for ideas in music and poetry today, something that could have real impact?
I'm a big internet user. I have a travel log, and I have a podcast called the John Sinclair Radio Show on Radio Free Amsterdam. We got our own internet radio station here. So all of that stuff's good. I know if I write something now, I can send it to people on my list, which is about 400, and people, they'll all know what I'll get to share my work with them. That's new. Before, when I came up, you had to mimeograph. You had to stand on the street corner and hand out the poems free, That was fun, but the audience was small. As you can imagine.
Let's talk about this companion CD to Guitar Army for a moment. How did that all come about being included with the book now?
Well, it was Kicks. I talked to the publisher, Adam Parfrey, into putting the CD in the book. It's really a lost leader, but I thought it would be fun to have some of the tunes and also those excerpts from the meetings and things. There's an interview with Bobby Seale on there, where he talks about the White Panthers. There's crazy things like our artist, Gary Grimshaw, trying to figure out how to be a Marxist-Leninist, and the soul searching about how we can form or improve our alliance with the Black Panther Party and all that kind of stuff. It was invigorating. A lot of that came off of an album that a friend of mine in Detroit, Kerry Warren, put out called Music is a Revolution. I just took some of the tracks, the spoken word tracks off of that.
Right on, John. Let's play one of your tracks from the CD now.
We work with everybody from a position of solidarity and unity and reinforcement of what they're doing, and then make our work to be to freakize them. That's what I call it. Is to turn them into freaks. That's our, position that I'm working with Mother Country elements of any kind. I think, especially people who are on the borderline, people like Buck Davis and like Sheila Murphy. I like to freakize them. They're into a working class ideology now because they think that's correct. They don't have any emotional allegiance, so they're on the borderline.
What are you going to do to freakize?
Well, you just try and turn them on, turn them into freaks like we did to people before.
I think it's probably easier to freakize women because
objectively.
They're being oppressed. And they can see the advantage that our way of living has for them as individuals,
The objective basis for them to be free guys exists,
That was from the Guitar Army companion CD, where you'll hear a prison interview with Bobby Seale, music from MC5, spoken word from Allen Ginsberg. John, you also have your own internet radio program now from Amsterdam, and there and again are really participating in this online media culture. Do you think that this freedom of the World Wide Web is offering some offset with music and poetry to the corporate interest out there?
Well, yeah, it gives us an alternative. It's like if you want to make records, or whatever you want to call them. I call them records. They've always been records to me. But if you want to make records, you can make whatever you want, then you can put it online, you can try and find your audience. Other than that, unless you meet some nut with a record company that really likes what you're doing, which is what the independent thing is kind of about. But if you're talking about the regular record companies, there's no way 98% of us would ever get on one of those because we would never sell 1 million records. We wouldn't sell 20,000 records. So if you can place 1,000 records in the hands of people who might like to hear them, then you can afford to make another one.
Yeah, indeed.
You can sell 2,000, you can make some, a couple $1,000 off of it for yourself as the artist. So that's more perspective than spending half your life trying to get a record contract with Sony or some other people in Japan or Germany, or the people that own these record companies now. And they're American accountants that run them. To me, once you take the vow of poverty as an artist in today's society, once you take the vow of poverty, you can do whatever you want to. Once you realize that they aren't going to let you make a living at this, you can do whatever you want and have your fun, you know, and make something creative, and maybe some other people will like it. But if people don't make something creative, nothing's ever going to change. If they keep recycling the same tired garbage, it's just going to get more tired. There's no other way it can go.
Right on, John. That was a spectacular insight message there, man. Evolution through creativity. Huh?
Amen.
Right on, John. You know, we're going to close out now with another tune from the CD companion to the Guitar Army re-release. Here's the Rationals with the title track, Guitar Army. Was the Rationals with the song Guitar Army. Poet, author, activist John Sinclair will be in New York City this week. You can catch him at a number of venues. We have links to all the places he'll be appearing up at our website today at normalaudiostash.com. You've been listening to NORML's Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Make sure you visit our website at normalaudiostash.com. That's NORMLAUDIOSTASH.com for more information about every day's show. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Thanks for listening today. See you at 4:20 tomorrow.